I'd like to consider, without going through it in great detail, these first two chapters of the book of Numbers. Chapters one might, in our own personal reading of the Lord's Word, be tempted to skate over because they have just a list of numbers and a list of names. Chapter 1 gives the numbering of them. Chapter 2 gives where they were to pitch in the camp, where exactly the camp was to be organised and ordered, and quite repetitive, but all obviously given by the Lord to show us something in particular. And yes, obviously in one sense we're not going through the wilderness, but I think they are an encouragement to us as the Lord's people, the Lord's church in every generation, that we are to be ordered and orderly. God is a God of order. I heard somebody say recently he'd written a book, The Holy Spirit is the Spirit of Order. Something people sort of in these days tend to forget. But God gives us an order in the church, in the local church, and I'm speaking in a very broad sense, to be part of local churches, but that also it is for the purpose of passing through this world and to be prepared and ready in one sense for battle. We are in a spiritual warfare, and Moses is commanded by the Lord to make these preparations so that the people are prepared and ready and ordered, not that they are in battle array, but in an orderly way passing through the desert and camping in a way to protect themselves and the tabernacle. And we won't go on to it, but later you read in Numbers 10, I think, how you have the silver trumpets, and there were particular alarm calls given and various ways that they were prepared for war. And interestingly, I don't think, I may have it wrong, but in all their wilderness journeyings, they were attacked by the Amalekites when they came out of Egypt, but we don't read of them being actually attacked in the wilderness until they came to the edge of Canaan, and Zion, king of Bashan, Og, king of Bashan, and Sihon resisted them, and they fought against them. But although they are prepared, as it were, they are not actually attacked. And we pass through the wilderness of this world, and we are in spiritual warfare, and it is good to watch and to pray and to be alert. But in one sense, it's all the better if we are watching and praying and alert. Peter says, sort of be watchful, be sober, because your adversary is a roaring lion, goes about seeking who may devour. And the lion will prey on those who are not watching. The zebras who can watch the lion and so on, they will not generally try to go for. And here the children of Israel are all ready and prepared, but actually within the goodness of the Lord and his protection, spared from serious attack actually when they were passing through the wilderness. But let me begin chapter 1 fairly swiftly. After they have spent a year at Sinai and the laws have been given, Leviticus has been given to Moses, now they are to prepare to move on, and they are told to number. He is told to number the people. There is possibly a link back to Exodus, where they had to number the people to gather a poll tax. So in one sense the job was half done, and that's why they appeared to do it really very quickly. Matthew Henry thinks they did it in a day, but I don't know. But anyway, they do it, and they number those, and it is those who are 20 years old and upward, all that are able to go forth to war in Israel. And they have this list of the leaders of each tribe that is to help them, and they gather them together and number them. And then we have the slightly repetitive list of all the tribes, and however many were in each tribe, the men between 20 and 60, I think. But one, to show that the Lord's promise to Abraham was wonderfully fulfilled. He would take his, and to Jacob, he would go down into Egypt, and they would become a great nation, which they have done. Interestingly, Matthew Paul has a little, this is just an aside, calculation, and it speaks of the blessing of the Lord being upon them to increase them, give them increase. And I take it that they were there not for the full 430 years that runs from a time in Abraham's life, but for 215 years. And if Matthew Paul's calculation is if every child got married and had 3 children, you would arise at this figure, which is not unrealistic, really. That with the blessing of God, that would be so, and obviously it was so. But it's interesting that it's a simple calculation, but that's how it works out. And here then we have these numbers, and it will be when we come on to chapter 2 that I believe they use these numbers to put certain tribes together on one side and different sides of the tabernacle, roughly equal in number. We find Judah the most numerous, though if you were to count, I believe in one sense the children of Joseph, both Ephraim and Manasseh, they are equal or slightly more if you count them together. Ephraim, as Jacob had prophesied, though younger, would be more than was more here than Manasseh, but all in fulfillment of the Lord's promises and the words given by Jacob. And lastly, we have I'll just read verse 46. Even all they that were numbered were 600,000 and 3,550. But the one tribe they did not number were the Levites. Verse 47, but the Levites after the tribe of their fathers were not numbered among them. For the Lord has spoken unto Moses, saying, only thou shalt not number the tribe of Levi, neither take the sum of them among the children of Israel, but thou shalt appoint the Levites over the tabernacle of testimony, and over all the vessels thereof, and over all things that belong to it. They shall bear the tabernacle and all the vessels thereof, and they shall minister unto it, and shall encamp round about it. And it is so they will obviously have to look after the tabernacle, the holy things. And it says, interestingly, verse 52, and the children of Israel shall pitch their tents, every man by his own camp, and every man by his own standard throughout their hosts. But the Levites shall pitch round about the tabernacle of testimony, that there be no wrath upon the congregation of the children of Israel. And the Levites shall keep the charge of the tabernacle of testimony. And the children of Israel did according to all that the Lord commanded Moses, so did they. The Levites were there to correctly look after the tabernacle. Later on in Numbers, we have very detailed commands as to which clan of the Levites was to do what. The Gershonites to do a particular thing, the Merarites to do just the outside bit, to carry that on oxen carts, the children of Kohath to be the ones that would actually carry on their shoulders the sacred furniture, and the priests were the only ones who were allowed to go and cover the ark and other bits, cover it with covering so that nobody saw it, but all so that the tabernacle's holiness would be preserved. But yet the Lord would be with them, and they were to keep this sort of order and command as the Lord gave them. But then going on to chapter 2, this is partly what I wanted primarily to speak of. We have, once they're all numbered, the Lord gives Moses the commands how they are to pitch, how they are to camp in the wilderness in an orderly way. And the Lord spake unto Moses and unto Aaron, saying, Every man of the children of Israel shall pitch by his own standard with the ensign of their father's house. Far off about the tabernacle of the congregation shall they pitch. And it begins, And on the east side toward the rising of the sun shall they of the standard of the camp of Judah pitch throughout their armies. And Nahshon the son of Amminadab shall be captain of the children of Israel. And it repeats again, the numbers and his host, and those that were numbered of them were 314,600. There Judah is first mentioned to pitch on the east side, and I think from what it says, the ensign of their father's house, that they may have had obviously the one great ensign for Judah. Did they, each family or wider family, have another ensign so that people could find their way back? It wouldn't surprise me if that was so. And obviously they are allowed in the daytime, often they are in a particular spot for years, they can move freely within the camp, but just to pitch their tents in an orderly way according to the Lord's command, which is very sensible, to have an orderly, so that there's no sort of rush for the best pitch, very unseemly rush for the best pitch, but no, this is where the Lord has put you, and this is where it is best to be. And on each side there would be 3 tribes, and with Judah there would be Issachar. Verse 5, and those that do pitch next unto him shall be the tribe of Issachar, and Nethaneel the son of Zuar shall be captain of Issachar, and his host and those that were numbered thereof were 54,400. And also the tribe of Zebulun, and Eliab the son of Helon shall be captain of the children of Zebulun. And they then, in total, for the whole of the camp of Judah, verse 9, all that were numbered in the camp of Judah were 100,000 and 80,000 and 6,400 throughout their armies. These shall first set forth. They, when they pitch, when they break their tent and camp, Judah and Issachar and Zebulun are to go first as they move through the wilderness. Again, in a very sensible, orderly way. Again, as would be done, not that I've ever done it, but I imagine in an army marching through the wilderness, you obviously march in your regiment, in your unit, and in the order that the general or whoever's ordering it gives, and not in just a sort of rabble, really. And then the other parts, the south side, shall be the standard of the camp of Reuben, according to their armies, and with Reuben is Simeon and Gad, and again these are all totaled up. Verse 16, all that were numbered in the camp of Reuben were 100,050 and 1,450 throughout their armies, and they shall set forth in the second rank. Then comes the Levites in the middle. Then the tabernacle of the congregation shall set forward with the camp of the Levites in the midst of the camp. As they encamp, so shall they set forward, every man in his place by their standards. And then on the west side, Ephraim, with Manasseh and Benjamin, in one sense all related, Joseph and Benjamin together, and again totaled up, and they were to go all together. And then lastly, verse 25, the standard of the camp of Dan shall be on the north side by their armies, and the captain of the children of Dan shall be Ahiezer, the son of Ammishaddai, and the numbers in the same way of them with Naphtali and Asher together, and again all numbered up 100,050 and 7,600. They shall go hindmost with their standards. And it repeats the total number, verse 32 and verse 34. And the children of Israel did according to all that the Lord commanded Moses. So they pitched by their standards, and so they set forward, everyone after their families, according to the house of their fathers. So in the tribes, and then within the tribes, in their families within the tribes, and all very orderly and sensible. And they did as they were commanded. Would camp, we read elsewhere, when the fiery cloudy pillar stopped. Incidentally, they had the fiery cloudy pillar all the time with them to protect them, and it was very wonderful that the presence of God went with them in a visible way to protect them. But it did not mean the Lord would not have them to keep this order and be prepared, as it were, for battle. And we, in one sense, are the same. We have the presence of God, the promise of God, many promises to guard us and keep us, the precious gift of the Holy Spirit. He that is in you is greater than he that is in the world. But it doesn't mean we should, in one sense, despise what the Lord gives us in terms of the church. And again, I use that in the sort of broadest sense. They would depend upon the Lord. I'll just read one verse. As the ark was to go out, as they left, as it were, and as the ark went forth, they were to utter these words. I'll just read. And they departed from the mount of the Lord 3 days' journey. Sorry, this is chapter 10, verse 33. And the ark of the covenant of the Lord went before them in the 3 days' journey to search out a resting place for them. And the cloud of the Lord was upon them by day, when they went out of the camp. And it came to pass, when the ark set forward, that Moses said, Rise up, Lord, and let thine enemies be scattered, and let them that hate thee flee before thee. And when it rested, he said, Return, O Lord, unto the many thousands of Israel. Their confidence was in the Lord to protect and to dwell with them. Return, O Lord. And our confidence is in the Lord. But we are given, and again in the broadest sense, the church to be an orderly way that we walk through this wilderness for care, for encouragement, for order, for help in our different ways in our own spiritual warfare. Some may be more tried at particular times, and we are to pray and to support and encourage. We are to do what we can to assist, though we ourselves may not be in such difficulty. Yet it's very precious that we have the Lord's people to pray and to encourage. And God has given it to us for that, I believe, for that help. The broader church in one sense as well, but particularly the church where the Lord, where we are, where the Lord has put us. Now, I think some people maybe take this too far, but technically speaking, in the scriptures, there are no parachurch organisations. The only organisation we find is the church. Now, I'm not saying we should condemn all parachurch organisations or, in one sense, God forbid, missionary societies, but we don't actually find them as a defined organisation in the church, in the scriptures. And ideally are very encouraging and helpful, like Open Air Mission. If every church went out and did their open airs in every sort of part of the land, there wouldn't really be a need for the Open Air Mission in one sense, and in other ways, other things. And personally, I believe, rather than have, say, like big evangelistic rallies like Billy Graham or something, it's better for the local church to just press on, often in seemingly small ways, but it can be far more effective in the long term, far more helpful in discipling individuals and so on, than these mass rallies. I sort of learned early on in my Christian life, maybe I learned the wrong thing, but I helped at a mission to London in the early 1980s. A man called Lewis Palau was leading it, and big meetings and so on, and we took the teenagers from the church along, and I was trained as a counsellor, but nobody who responded at the meetings, who went forward at the meetings and were sort of put in contact with our church, and you make contact with them, apart from one lad who was the son of a church family and who is still going on with the Lord, none of them even came to church. I sort of thought, what was the point of all that then? But having children's work, preaching the gospel in the church is, I think, more effective over the long term, and believers joining themselves to local churches. I did meet a lady some years ago, and I asked her, a lady in Bath, I said, where do you go to church? And her answer was, I access the body in various places. So I didn't get any further with that, but it's a ridiculous answer. But anyway, even I think, I shouldn't say that maybe, but evangelical Anglicans will be committed. They may not have quite the same structure of membership or whatever, but they will be committed to the church they go to and committed to the work, and it's natural in one sense and precious. Even Paul and Barnabas, it's not to say Paul's apostleship was given to him by the church. He says no, it came directly from the Lord, but we read of them in Acts 13 being commended to the work by the local church in Antioch. They are told, the church is told, separate Paul and Barnabas to the work which I have called them, and then the church prays for them and sends them out. And they go on their missionary journey, and then they come back to Antioch and report. All very right. The church in Nairobi, Trinity Baptist. And I know this isn't very particularly usual, but the pastor who was there, now retired, he was sent by the church in Liverpool, Belvedere Road, one local church, as it were, sending someone out who then began another local church. And often that's not the way, and it's not to condemn those that don't, but it is possible. And even parachurch organisations, the best will require a reference from your local church, open air mission. I don't quite know how, I must ask Paul Stinchcombe, because Brethren assemblies don't have a formal membership process, but they require to be people going to regularly committed to a church. UBM, United Beach Missions, you have, if you apply, you have to give a reference as well as your testimony from your church, and very right it is. But also, as I mentioned, it is the church militant. We are the church militant. We are passing through this wilderness, and it is, in one sense, we are in danger. Very sensible that the Israelites would camp in such an orderly way, gathered round the tabernacle, protecting what was precious, and also the Lord there with them, protecting them. And we are that church militant, and all of us face at different times challenges and burdens, and the warfare may be difficult at times. We are assured of the victory, we are assured of the Lord's help and upholding and blessing, but it's very precious to have other believers praying and encouraging us and helping us, being very enormously helpful to us over the last few months. And as in the ordinary army, in one sense, love for the brethren, love for our fellow soldiers is a great motivator and a great encourager and a great help. I found out something I really had no idea about before, that the English word soldier, it comes from the Latin, but the Latin comes from the French, Old French. The Latin word for soldier, I think, is we get military from. And this was related to a group of warriors in Aquitaine, in the southwest, the Aquitani, who were fiercely loyal, probably too much so. And Caesar commented on this in his Gallic Wars book, and it came into English through when the Normans came in 1066, soldat, which then became soldier, but originally from these French, though not Gallic, warriors from Aquitaine, the Aquitani, so very fiercely loyal to one another. And the regimental system and the unit, the idea of a unit, is often for the soldiers in the army a great motivation to support, to help, to rescue, to fight with the others in their army, in their particular unit. And I heard, again, I heard this recently, that this is a sort of slightly similar point, that the Germans had in the Second World War a deliberate policy of targeting officers, which they were quite successful with on the Eastern Front with the Russians and with the Poles and with the French. And they believed that because Britain was a very class-based society, and certainly there were sort of class hierarchies in the army, often the officers would come from private schools, public schools and so on. And their reasoning was, well, we shoot the officer, we kill the officer, the unit falls apart. Nobody will be giving them commands. But although, yes, the British, or certainly the English society, was quite hierarchical and class-based, the army ran on slightly different lines. You had the officer, but you had the non-commissioned officer. And as soon as the officer fell, wounded, killed, the non-commissioned officer would take over, the sergeant or the corporal. They would know. They would probably be more experienced than the officer. They would know the drills. They would know the unit as a whole had been trained. This is how we do this or that. They were aware, so that though the officer might be killed, the unit would continue fighting. And I thought in one sense it's similar to a gospel church, an evangelical church. Some churches, Orthodox, Roman Catholic, you do away with the priest. What do you have? They might say, well, you still have a church, but you can't celebrate, have the meetings. You go to an Orthodox church. I think I once went to my cousin's wedding, and the only thing the congregation ever seemed to do was cross themselves. All the singing, all the speaking, all done by the priests. But a biblical church, the principles are taught and passed down, and in one sense you can exist and continue without the pastor, certainly for a while, and the principles of outreach, principles of Sunday school, is not all held in the pastor, but is taught, and the doctrines are known and taught and understood, and we are a priesthood of all believers. We don't have a sort of special class of priests. The Lord says, teaching them all things whatsoever I have commanded you. We are to teach, to pass on to all the people of God the precious truths of His Word. And in that sense, churches do and can function without a minister for a little while. I'm not saying it's ideal at all, but and in times of persecution, it's often the pastors who are first targeted, because the authorities think, oh, we take them, the whole thing will collapse. But thankfully, the Lord is wiser than that, and it is able to continue. And the whole, I'm not going to draw parallels between the Israelites in the wilderness, but just the order that the Lord gives us in the New Testament for His church is good and able to help us to pass through this wilderness safely, ultimately to get to the promised land, and for our blessing and for our good. We may think at times, oh, it's constraining, I wish I could be here or there, but we're given these things ultimately for our good and for our help. And though obviously different churches differ exactly how we are to implement the order that we find, the blueprint that we find in the New Testament, yet there is, I believe, a blueprint. Even William Carey, he would not enter the ministry until the church had heard him preach and recommended him to it. This was before he went to India. And he went and preached to a church, and they refused to recommend him. He had to wait a whole year. But very careful, as he saw it, and as was practiced at the time, to fulfill the way that the Lord had given. And ultimately, they did form a little missionary society, but a number of different churches agreeing to support them in going out to India, and wonderfully blessed and helped and upheld and enabled. The Lord will not forsake His people who seek humbly to walk in His ways, keep His word, and He will bless. And it may be despised by the world, and worldly churches that have great worldly structures may seem to have much more success, but ultimately it's far better to trust the Lord's commands and ways. Amen. Now our last second hymn, number 722, a pilgrim in a desert land.